I want to talk about the second part of the microstrategy. I titled the video yesterday, "MicroStrategy is the only strategy," and I talked about the options that they have. I talked about the convertible debt that they've been using and how that works, what the benefit is. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into the convertible debt aspect of it. And I also want to talk about from both people's sides of this and how it's a win-win for both sides, which is kind of crazy. People have called it like the infinite money glitch. The one thing I saw yesterday, I was actually going to do a full show about this, and I might still, but I'm going to do just a shorter clip for this. But I'm pretty sure that in the Big Short, everybody's familiar with that whole thing and how it worked and what was happening there. Not everybody understands it, but I think they have a good general idea of what happened. But it was Michael Burry who saw what was coming with the housing market in the US and shorted it, bet against it. And I think that whole thing, he made about $800 million. That was like his main take home after everything happened, everything collapsed in 2008. And they compared that and they said, Michael Burry in The Big Short, what that was based off of, made $800 million off the US real estate crash. And Saylor's kind of doing the exact same thing right now, but he's, instead of shorting the real estate market, he's shorting the fiat dollar. And he's already at, before Bitcoin has even moved this bull run, he's already up 8 billion. So The Big Short, there's a big thing about it. There's a Hollywood movie about it. He made 800 million. Michael Saylor is already up $8 billion. And I haven't said this on the show for a while, but it's worth mentioning here. The difference between it's easy to say million, it's easy to say billion, it's easy to see two words, but the difference between a million and a billion is basically a billion. If you think about that, if you understand that, that's how much more a billion is from a million. So anyways, he's already up 8 billion and he's basically shorting fiat. He's shorting the fiat dollar. That's his strategy. And so the convertible debt aspect of this, the one thing that I wanted to dive into a little bit further was that, this is what happens. You have to look at it through the eyes of somebody who would be lending their money to Michael Saylor and why they would be doing that. Because we know that they're hardly getting any sort of interest rate from it. His loans, his financing is between 0% and 1.5%, compared to if you wanted to take on $1 billion loan, it would probably be 5, 6, 7 or more percent, right? So he's getting very favorable rates. So why does it make sense for somebody to enter into that agreement? Because it's convertible. So they can convert that debt into shares. They get a fixed in price. If the price of MicroStrategy goes up, they can buy it at that price and they can cash in. The example I used yesterday was their convertibility option. Let's say it's $200 per share, and the price of MicroStrategy shares run up to $2,000 per share. They can convert that debt into shares at $200 at the agreed upon amount. So their gain there, that's where they're getting their return from Saylor. So from their perspective, this is how it makes sense, because you could say, well, yeah, in a perfect world, when the price goes from 200 to 2,000, that makes sense. But what happens when it goes the other way? Well, there's a wasp in here. I thought all the wasps were dead. That's why the door is open here. Oh, it just flew out. There you go. So that's where was I there? There's still risk there, right? Because, well, maybe the share goes from 200 to 100 and they don't want those shares, but that's the risk. They're still going to get their original balance back. Let's say they lent Saylor $1 billion to buy Bitcoin. It's called I think it's a call option. So they would say, okay, we want to convert, or we want to take back our debt at the end of the term. So if the price would be below their agreed upon amount, then they would just take back their $1 billion loan. They'd get the $1 billion, the principal back, plus the interest that Saylor would have paid them through the years. As low as it is, it's still income. And they would have lost that trade, but they're still getting their principal back, their $1 billion in principal back. So that's worst case. That's why it makes sense for these investors to take this option with Saylor. But then if you think about it, so then the lender gives Saylor $1 billion. Saylor takes that money, buys Bitcoin with it. As the price of Bitcoin goes up, the value of MicroStrategy, the share price, goes up, which goes along with their mission there for the convertible debt. So that's in good times. In bad times too, they can just get their principal back, get their interest. That's it. So there's really no downside to either side here. And we talked about in the clip yesterday too, like Saylor can do that. They can issue convertible debt. If the share price goes up, they get a bunch of money coming in through convertible debt. The share price goes up. They can sell some of their shares, buy more Bitcoin, increase the balance sheet of the company. Share price goes up, or they can issue more shares, which that's the strategy that I don't love. And I think that they're trying their best to go away from that, which is diluting other people's shares to buy more Bitcoin. But they could do it in like a bear market. Historically, if you look at when Saylor has bought Bitcoin, it's not during bear markets. He didn't buy much Bitcoin when the price was like $20,000 because market sentiment, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for him to be doing it at that time. But I think now that he has a much more proven track record and people understand what he's doing here, I think that he could actually raise a lot of money now because he has a huge network of people who have seen the strategy at work. And I think that he's going to be able to raise money during a bear market and capitalize on the low price of Bitcoin. So shareholders, they probably won't love the fact that their shares are being diluted, but they're doing it in a way because the price of Bitcoin's down. So they're getting more sats per share. That's the whole thing. That's what every company in a decade from now, the only thing that they're going to care about is sats per share. Earnings per share, obviously, but sats per share too. And they have 250,000 Bitcoin today. They have 42 billion coming into Bitcoin through this same raising debt over the next 3 years. And so the price of Bitcoin goes up, the value of the company goes up. They can raise more money. They can sell shares, buy more Bitcoin. It's kind of like a cheat code. He's literally shorting the fiat dollar right now with Bitcoin. Nobody understands it. Such a huge opportunity there. But keep in mind, and I didn't mention this yesterday, I should have. That's the other thing I want to mention here, is there are risks involved, right? Because compared to holding Bitcoin, somebody else is holding MicroStrategy's Bitcoin on their behalf, and somebody else is holding your shares in MicroStrategy on your behalf. So that's the risk there. It sounds like a great play. It makes a lot of sense, but there is a lot of risk there in terms of counterparty that you don't have with Bitcoin, right? So that's what I suggest is every time, you're thinking about this, if you're going to go buy some MicroStrategy after watching this, only do that with the money you have in like your pension accounts. The money that's already in the system, that's good to go. That's good to go into MicroStrategy. You don't have to worry about the tax implications. You don't have to worry about the fees of withdrawal fees, all that bullshit. You just swap it around, buy MicroStrategy, let that grow, preferably in like a tax-free account. But that's the money you use. And any amount of cash you have, any amount of savings account or savings, that goes into Bitcoin. You get Bitcoin, you get some cold storage, you get a hardware device, you learn how to manage it. That's what you do because you have full custody of that. There's no other asset like that. That's the number one that everybody should be going for with cash outside the system. But any money in the system, I would highly suggest looking into MicroStrategy. Oh, this is exactly. Jason, if the US starts allocating to their strategic reserve in January and Saylor is buying 42 million, I think it's 45 million a day. That's the, you see $42 billion over 3 years. You're like, okay, well, that's a lot of money. But then you actually break it down and you see, okay, that's $45 million per day. That's how much Bitcoin MicroStrategy is going to be buying. 45 million per day for 3 years. There will absolutely be a new floor price for Bitcoin, and it's going to be very high. The other clip I showed yesterday, and this was a real, like I'd seen this before, but I hadn't seen it in about 6 months, but it was a real eye opener for me. And a lot of people were saying the same last night. So I want you to go check this out. If you weren't at the show yesterday, if you didn't see the part where we looked at how many years it would take the average person to get to 1 Bitcoin, we calculated 20 years for the average person based on an average income, based on very, very conservative expenses. I think it would take longer than that, but 20 years. So go back, and maybe if I remember, I'll put the link in the description here today for that video. It's about 5 minutes long, but it shows like the actual numbers and where the numbers are coming from, the price of Bitcoin today, how long it'll take. And that's assuming that the price stays here forever or for the next 20 years. That's assuming that the price is going to be 75,000 for the next 20 years. So again, the point of that is just to make sure that you understand how valuable the Bitcoin is that you're holding. Don't take it for granted. Even if it's 2 million sats that you think is, okay on the exchange for a while because it's only 2 million sats, you have no idea how much the 2 million sats are going to be worth next year or 10 years from now or 40 years. Like, don't leave any crumbs behind here, or old wallets. So you're just like, whatever. I have 3 million sats on an old ledger. Who cares? Those 3 million sats, nobody understands how valuable those 3 million sats are going to be one day. So treat every sat, regardless of how much they are, protect those with everything that you can. And you have to invest some time or some money, but learn how to protect that Bitcoin. I have a Justin Bieber song stuck in my head right now.